Welcoming you to a life of awareness, the Presence Project is excited for you to join us for today's podcast with your host, Paul Kerzner.
Hello and welcome to episode 45 of Are You Being Present? My name is Paul Kerzner. I want to welcome you to the present moment. I want to welcome you to the here and now, and I want to thank you for joining me in this amazing and unprecedented present moment. The title and topic of today's podcast is Presenting Presence. I was invited by David and Angelike Norrie to join their webinar and present presence. And it was an invitation that I really just couldn't turn down because I felt like the information that I had to offer their members, the people that they work with, the people that they coach, would be really vital and useful. I also feel that presence is vital and useful to everyone, everywhere, so there's no exclusion really. But I'm always interested in reaching different audiences, and this proved to be a very fruitful experience. So what I decided that what I was going to do was to rip the audio from that webinar and present it as a podcast. So without further ado, here is episode 45, Presenting Presence, featuring David and Angelike Norrie. Before I begin this presentation, I want to welcome everyone to the present moment. You're all here now, and that's all that's important. So before I jump in, I think it's important so that I discuss a little bit about who I am and why I'm qualified to speak on presence. My name is Paul Kerzner, and I'm a licensed acupuncturist here in the state of Arizona. I worked in corporate America for about 11 years. I was living in New York City. The last place I worked was for a mid-sized mutual fund company. And I made my great escape out to Tucson, Arizona, where I attended the Arizona School of Acupuncture and Oriental Medicine. I was there for about 3 years, and as soon as I graduated, I moved up to Scottsdale and I opened my clinic 6 weeks later. I'm an acupuncturist and herbalist, and I offer a lot of nutritional guidance to my patients. The name of my clinic is Above and Beyond Acupuncture, and there I specialize in the treatment of anxiety, stress, and depression. And I'm also a public speaker, a mentor, and a presence coach. So the question is how did I learn the importance of presence? And by specializing in anxiety, stress, and depression, I had this unique vantage point, and I started working with patients, and I learned a lot in a very short amount of time. I started observing that at the root of anxiety, stress, and depression was a lack of presence. It was always about talking or thinking about the past or worrying about the future. And I saw this over and over again, countless times with all of my patients. And then I also was able to reflect personally that a lot of the issues that I had throughout my life had to do with me not being present. And, it would be one thing if it was a few people, but it is such a strong commonality and experience that we all share. And so I started to work on it, and I started to discover that there were some really helpful tools and that I'm going to speak on a little bit later during the presentation. And a lot of the things that I've learned were through self-reflection, self-exploration, and self-development. And I know that a lot of people that are listening right now are all working on these things. One of the things I talk about is that, on Earth, there's no instruction book for life. We kind of just wing it, and we have to figure things out along the way. But if there was an instruction book, then learning presence and learning how to be present would certainly be chapter 1. It's really that important. Everything springs from presence, because if you're not in the present moment, then you're lost somewhere in the past or the future. So what does being present mean? Well, the first thing I like to really talk about is that the past and the future are really just illusions. They exist only in your head. And if you want to live in that state of illusion, you're never going to have true sense of clarity. The present moment is really the only thing that exists. It's the only thing that's tangible. It's the only thing that you can see, that you can touch, that you can feel. And, when you lose that, you truly lose the ability to enjoy where you are, how you are, and with whom you are. So there has to be like a full awareness and attention, and you have to gain clarity. And the only way to really gain clarity is to learn how to be present. And one of the first things that I talk about is learning how to be the observer. This is a really quintessential piece when we're learning how to be present. And I like to provide practical tools when it comes to being the observer. It's not just like a keyword where I tell you to observe. What I'm going to explain is how and what to observe. So in our minds, we all have a voice in our head. And we don't really like to talk about the voice in our head because we think that other people are going to think we're crazy. But the truth is that we all have an ego. And this ego likes to be in control. And it knows all of your triggers. And it knows when you're tired. It knows when you're hungry. It knows when you're frustrated. And it likes to send up these messages or these thoughts or feelings. And what it does is it manipulates you in a way. And one of the first things that I try to teach the people that I work with is that we have to start observing that voice in our mind. We have to start challenging in a way. And the best way to do that is to ask yourself over and over again if you're being present, and so that you can become the watcher instead of the victim. Because there really are two positions that you could take, and it's either the victim of your ego mind or you're going to be the observer of it. And I'm really just summarizing it right now because like that's a whole rabbit hole that we can go down, and maybe later in the presentation we can talk about that. But even just bringing up the fact that we all have this voice in our head, and we have to learn how to change the relationship with it, because if we don't, we will be dominated by it throughout our whole reality, and all it really wants to do is pull us out of the present moment. One of the other things that I like to talk about a lot as well is becoming detached. Detachment is really an important facet and aspect of our reality. A lot of us become overly attached to people, places, and things, and that creates a significant amount of suffering. The Buddhists talk about detachment, and the way that I see it is that I just don't want to grasp things too tightly, because when we do, what it does is it pulls us out of the present moment, and subsequently, again, it creates more self-inflicted suffering. And the whole goal of learning presence is to put an end to self-inflicted suffering. So a question that I'm asked quite often is, what does it feel like to be present? And the truth is that presence is a subjective experience. It's something that is going to feel different to each person. But when I'm being fully present, I feel a sense of stillness and peace within me. So it's not like I necessarily stop thinking all the time, but I can enter into a space of no thought. And again, what I'm doing is I'm being the observer. So, and when I get into that state of observation, I have a heightened awareness of the surroundings around me without being overly attached or placing labels onto those surroundings. Now, I know this all seems like a lot, and I'm kind of blowing through a lot of information, but I don't have a lot of time, and I want to make it as succinct as possible. So, one of the things that what I talk about is when I'm feeling fully present, I'm able to kind of let go of the ego and all of the things and the memories and the thoughts that it's firing up. And it's really an important place to be, because I know a lot of us have a lot of responsibilities throughout the day in our lives. But, my question is if you have all these responsibilities that are so important to you and you're so worried about getting it all done, how can you afford not to be present? I mean, then what's the purpose of all the things that you're doing? And that leads me to, what are some of the advantages of being present? I'm only listing 4 here, but the advantages are there are quite a few. One of the first ones I talk about is just a greater sense of satisfaction with life. It's hard to really enjoy all the things that you have if you're constantly worried about, the future, or you're constantly thinking about the past. And by being fully present, we have a true sense of clarity and self-worth. We have a better understanding of who we are, where we are, and all the things that are around us, instead of using labels and being overly attached. One of the better advantages of being present is, definitely having lower levels of stress throughout the day. And you have a better sense and a better ability to make better decisions from a place of stability and not emotion. And that's actually a really important point, is that, when you're making decisions from a place of emotion, it never truly works out. And to really have a stable footing in life, you have to have a sense of clarity. And being present will provide you with that sense of clarity. And that leads me to a question that I'm asked quite often is, why is it so difficult for me to be present? I talked a little bit about the ego and the voice in your head. And, this is really a good point for all of you listening to think about, the relationship that you have with the voice in your head. Because, a lot of us have been completely dominated by it for our entire lives. And no one had a conversation or told us that we don't have to listen to that voice. And sometimes that voice is so loud, and we think that it's us. And it truly is not. It's a component of your personality, but it is not who you are. And it really doesn't have your best interest in mind, because if you think about that voice, and if it's actually helping you, 9 times out of 10, it's not. It's making you feel worse. It's making you feel separate. It's making you feel different. So really looking at it for what it is through the observer role allows you to detach from that ego thought stream. And the ego loves fear. It loves to make you afraid. And fear is definitely a presence obstacle. Resistance is also another big obstacle towards presence. And I talk a lot about acceptance, but if we look at a lot of the suffering that we experience throughout life, we can see, once we get a sense of clarity, that the root of a lot of suffering is resistance, is pushing away, is trying to shut down, whatever it is that you don't like. The truth is that every single present moment is a learning opportunity. And when you resist a moment, you create more suffering for yourself. The way that we look at presence is that not being present doesn't mean that every moment feels great. Being present means that you accept every moment for exactly how it is, with the understanding that everything's constantly changing. Now, if you can keep reminding yourself of this and telling yourself that everything is constantly changing, you'll feel a lot better throughout whatever experience you're going through. Because, through the moments that you feel really, really great, well, those are going to change. Those aren't going to last. And through the moments that don't really feel that good, those are going to change, and those aren't going to last either. So, kind of setting aside the resistance, or at least looking at why you're resisting a person, place, or thing, is a really important step in becoming present. A big obstacle towards presence, and I'm bringing this up again, is attachment, because I think it's a vital facet of our reality, is that we truly become overly attached and identify with all the things that are outside of us, but really those are all fleeting. Everything and everyone that is going to change and eventually go. And, that might not make a lot of people happy to hear, but it's the truth. And, you have to make peace with that. If you find yourself constantly identifying with your belongings, or where you live, or what you drive, or whatever, that's just going to create suffering, because that puts you into a never-ending loop of being attached to things that don't last. There's nothing that's permanent. There's nothing that's perfect. And you have to learn how to let go so that you can get into a better flow state. One of the bigger issues that we have this day and age is multitasking. We have so many distractions that are constantly being thrown at us. Our smartphones, TV, there's just, it's countless, and it's only going to get worse. And worse is just a descriptor, but learning how to be present with all of the distractions in your life is definitely a skill. But valuing presence and having a strong mindfulness practice that I'll talk about a little bit later is a great way to learn how to separate yourself from the distractions so that you're more grounded and rooted. Goals is being goal-oriented, and I know a lot of people on this call are very goal oriented. And to me, one of the things I talk about often with patients is that all goals are truly useless, in the sense that goals constantly shoot you into the future. And the problem with being goal oriented is that there's a goal after the goal. It's a never ending regress into more goals. And goals, all they do is take you out of the moment. So you're constantly working towards this future space that hasn't happened. And there's a good chance that you might not make your goal. And if you don't make your goal, that creates more suffering for you. So what I tell people, it's what I explain to patients is, you can have desires, but, constantly shooting yourself into the future, trying to achieve endless goals, you're going to blow through life. And all you're going to do is accomplish goal after goal after goal. And you're never going to be in the moment. You're never going to be able to appreciate all of the many things that are right in front of your face in that moment. And one of the other obstacles that I see often with presence is, people eating, speaking, and living mindlessly. And that's truly a problem, because, I understand that a lot of people want to lose weight. And I know that there's a lot of people that speak carelessly. Now, you'll create a reality that's very undesirable if you're not thinking before you're speaking. And if you're eating and you're not really enjoying it in the moment, then what's the point of it? And I do work with some patients that they're trying to lose weight, and, being present and understanding why you're doing what you're doing in that moment is a quintessential step in really in losing weight and keeping the weight off. So, that's always a helpful tool towards, obtaining a desire like losing weight. And I say living mindlessly, and what I mean is living without intention. And a little bit later, I'll talk about intention versus expectation, but, you want to have meaning in your life, and you want to do the things that are important to you, but you always have to do those things with the intention that it's always going to happen in the present moment. And that's the most important thing, not where you're going to be or where you were. And here it is, ladies and gentlemen. This is the name of my podcast. It is the name of this presentation. Are you being present? This is the question that you have to ask yourself literally 1,000,000 times a day. You have to challenge every thought in the beginning, and you have to ask yourself, does this thought have anything to do with the present moment? Does this feeling have anything to do with the present moment? Am I being present? And you're going to find in the beginning that no, you're not being present. And it's a little startling at first, but the reward is that if you're really vigilant and asking yourself this over and over again, you're going to start catching yourself getting pulled out, whether you're driving, whether you're at dinner. It doesn't make a difference. You have to really monitor the thoughts that are popping up through your head and asking yourself this question. And this question is a gift. I mean, it really can change your reality. It's a very powerful question. And, I suggest that you write it down and think about it, because if you're not being present and you're constantly thinking about the past or the future, you're losing all of the treasure that exists in that moment. So I want to talk a little bit about some presence tools. And the point of my presentation and my offering is so that I can take something like presence and make it really practical. You can read a book like The Power of Now, and it's very theoretical, and it can lose you very quickly. So what I like to do is empower the people that I work with and provide presence tools that you can use on a daily basis. And the first one that I talk about always is building a daily mindfulness practice. It's really important, because the way you start your day will set the trajectory for the day, no matter how many distractions you have. And if you jump out of bed and just grind the day out, you're going to be like a rudderless ship. There's going to be very little direction, and it's going to be very difficult for you to root down in that moment. So my daily mindfulness practice is composed of 3 different parts. I have a guided meditation, I use affirmations, and I'll find an inspirational reading. Now, if you go on YouTube, there's millions of guided meditations for all different reasons. So if you want to find a guided meditation for anxiety, you can find one for that. I mean, there's guided meditations for sleep. Yeah, so my suggestion is to check out YouTube and find one that really speaks to you. and listen to it. You'll find that regular meditation in the beginning is very difficult, and people ask me about that. My suggestion is to start with guided meditation. There's a bunch of apps on the iPhone and in the Google Play Store, and they're all good tools. One of the other things I use is affirmations, and affirmations are statements that we use and say over and over again to impress our subconscious mind. This is really important, especially if you're finding you have specific issues, whether it's anxiety or worry, and if you're worried about money, all these different issues. So one of the suggestions I make to my patients is to go online and do a Google search for affirmations, sample affirmations. Louise Hay has a ton of affirmations, and just find one that really speaks to you. And what I do is that I will write that affirmation down like 55 times, and I'll use that 5 days in a row. And after the 5th day, I will look at that affirmation and I'll ask myself, is this true to me? Does this feel right? Do I believe it? And if it's a no, then I'll do it for another 5 days until, it really sinks in, until I really have a strong belief around it. And one of the other things that I do in the morning is I find an inspirational reading, whatever inspires me. So by combining these 3 elements, it really creates what I call a strong baseline of presence. It anchors you down. And it's so important. I mean, yes, you might have to wake up 15 minutes early, but this daily mindfulness practice has the ability to change your reality. And, in the grand scheme of things, what's 15 minutes? It's not a lot of time. And this is a very worthy practice. So my suggestion is to think about, what you want to do each morning, how you want each day to start. And are you willing to make these changes with the understanding that it might not change right away at first, but it will build upon itself. One of the another really valuable presence tool is breathing exercises. And, you can go very deep into breathing exercises, or you can just watch your breath in and out, 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out. But breathing can only be done in the present moment. So if you find yourself feeling anxious, sad, it doesn't matter. Just start monitoring your breath. That will anchor you and pull you into the present moment. There's plenty of videos on YouTube about breathing exercises. So again, if you're interested in learning a little bit more about that, certainly you can go there. Now, in this day and age, I think that one of the issues that we have, again, is that we have this need to make things complicated. And my intention is to bring simplicity to life and to the lives of the people that I work with. And it's not so simple to say that you need to simplify your life, but you really need to look at how you might be complicating it. And, there's a lot of subjectivity to that statement. But when you start becoming more present, you can see how some of the behaviors that you have, some of the things that you do on a daily basis that might not be working for you, might be better off, trying to simplify whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish. Exercising is also a very helpful presence tool. You can exercise and get shot out of the present moment thinking about what exercise you're going to do next, or, what exercises you did yesterday. So my suggestion is if you do a lot of exercising, whether it's running or lifting weights, that everything you do with intention, and you take your time with it. You don't try to blow through. And, that alone will be a very powerful experience, because we're all so used to going to the gym and just trying to get everything done so that we can get on with our day. But we're really missing some really key opportunities there to really glean what's going on where we're at. Next time you go to the gym, why don't you work on your presence a little bit more? And one of the other things I talk about that is a tremendous presence tool is children and pets. They are what I call presence machines. If you have a child under the age of like 8, maybe 5 or younger, these guys are like always in the present moment. They are not concerned with what happened yesterday or even an hour ago or what's going to happen in the next hour. They are like fully engrossed in whatever it is that they're doing in that moment. And you need no better reminder than a child to see what it's like to live with presence. Now, I know that we can't go through life as children, but we can learn a lot from children. The issue is that once children get a little bit older in school, they get indoctrinated into the kind of belief systems where they have to worry about tests, and they start learning about history. So they get started to get pulled out. But the younger children, it's a beautiful thing if you spend some time with them. Pets too. Animals by and large, they're always in the present moment. They have no concern about what's going to happen tomorrow or what happened yesterday. So, if you have a dog or a cat, even a goldfish, it doesn't matter. Just start observing them, watch their behavior, watch what they're doing. That will pull you into the present moment. Now, I have an opportunity to kind of like parlay into a topic that I discuss a lot with my patients, and it has to do with presence specifically, but it's intention versus expectation. This is an issue for a lot of us, and it's a presence obstacle because we go through life with a lot of expectation. It creates a lot of suffering. And again, since we're all adults here and we all have responsibilities, the question is, well, how am I supposed to go throughout my life and be present and not have expectation? And the answer is that you have to start learning how to live more with intention. The difference between intention and expectation is that intention is a more wide open way of living and being. When you do something with intention, you're okay with how it turns out, because if it doesn't turn out in a desired way, you can always change or adapt what has taken place. When you have expectation, what you're doing is you're setting yourself up so that whatever takes place 9 times out of 10 will not match the desired outcome, and that creates suffering for you, which will subsequently take you out of the present moment. And it's dangerous to constantly live in a state of expectation, because for a variety of reasons, but primarily because you're never in the present moment. And expectation usually, and I say usually, but it's always, creates a lot of self-inflicted suffering. So the way to really understand if you're living with expectation is to work on your sense of clarity. And as we talked about before, clarity is really gained through a state of presence, because when you're present, you're seeing things exactly for how they are, not how you perceive them to be. So, as you're planning your day, as you're planning your life, instead of setting these rigid expectations for how you want things to turn out, live a little bit more intentional, and you'll find that life becomes a lot easier, and you're able to enjoy the moments instead of being let down because a person, place, or thing didn't match what you thought they should have matched. And it is a transformative process by and large. So it's not like you're going to wake up tomorrow and live solely with intention, but by really understanding, how you're living your life. And if you are creating a lot of expectation for yourself, that's a really good step at ending a lot of the self-inflicted suffering that I talk about. That leads me to talk about how presence is a process. I've given a lot of people a lot of information, and one of the things that I like to remind everyone is that you have to be really patient when it comes to presence and mindfulness. It takes some time. And even if you have all of the tools, you have to understand that you've been a certain way for so long, and it's going to take a little bit of time and a lot of effort at first to unravel and shift your mindset. So try not to be hard on yourself. And I know that there's a lot of achievers and overachievers on this call, and a lot of type A personalities. What you need to do is really be mindful of how you talk to yourself, because there's no way that you don't let anyone else talk to you the way that you talk to yourself, first and foremost. And that, to really understand who you truly are is a process anyway. So we want to instill consistency, vigilance, and persistence into this process, because it's going to take some repetition. When I talked about the question, are you being present? I wasn't kidding. You're literally going to have to ask yourself that question over and over and over again. But, there's a lot of value in doing that, and it ends a cycle of self-inflicted suffering. And I keep on talking about self-inflicted suffering because the suffering that we experience, the majority of it is not at the hands of other people. And I do understand that there are times that is the case, but not more times than not, the suffering that we're living with is put on by ourselves, and that's done through perceptions and basically a lack of presence. One of the things that is also super helpful is to find a presence partner. If you're married or if you have a partner, whatever, and just to have someone to kind of talk about, and someone that could hold you accountable, that could catch you when you're not being present, when you're getting pulled out of the present moment, and not to have them be critical, or for you to be critical on them, but to ask them, well, look, does the things you're worried about, does the things you're talking about have anything to do with the here and now, with the present moment? And if it doesn't, well, how about we work on shifting that? Because when two people work on the same thing, there's really a lot of magic that can happen. And it's not to say you can't do it on your own, but it's super helpful. And in many ways, in my clinic and with the patients that I work with, I am their first presence partner. To me, it's quite an honor to bring people into the moment and then to send them on their way. And now I get to talk about goals and presence distractions. I kind of got into goals before, but I want to just reiterate the message here because I know that there are a lot of people listening that are goal-oriented. And I understand that you have sales goals and 5-year plans, 10-year plans. And I think it's admirable to set yourself up for these kind of things. But at the end of the day, it's most of the time reality doesn't match up to whatever goal that you set. And it's a presence obstacle nonetheless. You enter into this never-ending loop of more goals. And it's not really helpful. So what we want to do is we can reframe the definition of what a goal is and make it more like a desire. Because desires are intentional and desires also take place in the present moment. You're desiring something, a person, place, or thing, or a change, or whatever it is. Goals, by and large, are always about the future. And you become hyper-focused on this goal, and that's all you think about. That's what you work on. That's what you work towards. And it's a loss of time. It's a loss of energy, and it's not it's really not helpful. So, I want you to kind of reframe a little bit and think about how you could be more desirous and less goal-oriented. I'm entering into the final part of this presentation, and what I want to remind everyone that's listening right now is that you have a choice. We don't think that we do, but everything that we do and everything that happens, there's choices that are laced within it. And presence is a choice like everything else is a choice. So you can choose to be present. And if you're not actively choosing to be present, then you're allowing your ego, that thought stream to control you. You're allowing yourself to slip out of the present moment. You're allowing yourself to be hyper-focused on the past or the future. And, those are both, they're just illusions, and they have nothing to do with what anyone else is currently involved in. It's just you. And all that really is again, self-inflicted suffering. And I'm using a few keywords here because when you start thinking about what self-inflicted suffering really is, you can start taking ownership of some of the things that are happening in your life. And you can do that once you really have a sense of clarity, and you gain that sense of clarity through presence. And you can become present by using all those presence tools. And that pretty much wraps up my presentation. I wanted to get through a lot of information and then kind of turn this into a discussion. I do have a Facebook group that I've created. I have an iTunes podcast where I've put together about 44 episodes, and I talk about all different aspects of presence. And I also have my website, areyoubeinpresent.com. Really, the intention that I have for this information is to help awaken everyone to the present moment and the importance of presence. And if you take a look at my podcasts, you'll be able to listen to my work and kind of pick and choose which episodes kind of speak to you. And you'll be able to listen to it over and over again. You can listen to it in the car. You can listen to it while you're working out. It's not about me. And that's why I didn't spend a lot of time talking about my story, because my story is irrelevant. It's just the past. What my goal is really for everyone listening is to talk about the here and now, because the here and now is the only thing that's important. And it's the only thing that you can really have any effect over. And with that being said, I want to thank everyone for joining me in this present moment and listening to some information which I hope you find useful.
Well, I know that we certainly have, and the chat has indicated that they have as well. And Paul, just quickly, and maybe for us to address probably the elephant in the network marketing room, where we're constantly talking about goals, about achievement, about seeing your target and hitting your target, and I completely agree with you. And I think, and as we discussed today, the overachiever in me, gets pushed out of the presence a lot. So for those people that are listening who have spent the first 4 weeks of this series talking about goals, talking about joyful marketing, and doing it the right way, what would be your suggestion? Because they do have targets. They are seeking something different for their life. How would you suggest that they navigate through, still maintain that intention presence?
I understand the challenge in it. I do. And I understand the importance of achieving things. But if you're going to be hyper-focused on goals, okay, then, and that's all you think about, or that's a lot of what you think about, and you spend a lot of energy and time thinking about it, then like, what's the point of achieving all those things? Like all the things that you've already achieved? How can you honor and enjoy all the things that you have in front of your face if you're constantly focused on a future space that hasn't happened yet? It's impossible, and it creates a dichotomy. It creates a huge crevasse where like you want to be somewhere else. You want to achieve something else, but all the things that you have in front of you that you've already achieved aren't good enough because you want more. And that just puts you into this trajectory where there's never enough. There's always going to be another goal. There is a way to set goals intentionally that you can, and that you can still want to achieve a sales quota or whatever it is, but you're okay if you maybe don't make it. It's not going to, you don't have to set that expectation. Well, if I don't make this goal, then, I'm not happy, or if I don't lose this amount of weight, then I'm going to just quit. No, if you live more intentionally, it's like, look, I intended to lose 15 pounds this month. If I only lost 10 pounds, well, you know what? That's great, because now I have the opportunity to kind of shift my perspectives and the way I'm approaching it. But goals work hand in hand with expectation. So a lot of times when people don't hit those goals, they have that expectation that they had, like it doesn't get met. And then all of a sudden they want to give up. It's not working. They're sad. They're angry. They're upset. So it's all about perception. It's all about the way that you're seeing things. It's the way that you're describing it. And ultimately that's what allows you to feel better. But in the end, the most important thing is, what are you doing in that present moment, and how's it making you feel? Because if you're hyper-focused on goals, ask yourself this: what is it doing for you? Is it making your life better? Are you really enjoying this? Or is it that there's just constant goals and that you're never getting anywhere? Because like I said, you'll blow through a whole life, and it'll happen really quickly because you were so focused on achieving something that was not here in the present moment.
Yeah. And our thoughts, certainly with children, I don't want to alienate people that don't have children, but I think, when you talk about pets, okay, so maybe you have pets, but that's the easiest to relate to. And I think that's where it's made the biggest impact in our life. And if you relate that to the goals, we always, there was that song, The Cat's in the Cradle, about the guy who has never had enough time for his child. Then when he got older, he wanted the time and it wasn't there. And I think that's what we're in danger of now with our children being on devices and us being on devices. And it's hard. It is, Paul, you and I have discussed this. There's a dopamine effect to our cell phones and social media and things like this. And it's literally, you have to put a phone away. And I've been trying to just almost like smell my children and feel them and be in the present moment. So I'll relate that. And the other part, when you talked about exercising, I find myself all the time finishing up like the fourth set of one exercise, and I haven't even started it, and I'm already projecting into what's the next thing, instead of really feeling your muscles and slowing down and listening to your body. And I know it hurts sometimes, but enjoying that experience of, wow, my muscle this is how my body's working. What a miracle it is.
I think everyone is guilty of that at some point because we're task oriented. Okay. And I think that we can navigate this world and accomplish tasks, but we're accomplishing the tasks in the present moment. And if you're constantly thinking about the next task, then how could you really do what, or accomplish whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish fully? You're just not fully there. You see that like when you go to like a child's play and everyone's holding up their phones recording, but really, are they even going to watch that? No, but they're so focused on recording it and making sure the recording's going well that they're not being present for their children at that point. And I know that's a fact, but it's just a good example of how we struggle so much at just being present for the most simple things. And you're never going to get that moment back. Even if you watch that video, like it's not the same as actually being there. So we have to look at this culture that we're in of constantly trying to get everything on camera, but yet you were there in the moment, and that was actually the point of it, not for you to be a cameraman.
I have a question here from Matt and Michelle. They asked, is thinking about the past, even if it's a good memory, that makes you happy, not being present in the moment?
Yes. And I'm not saying that like you can't every now and again reminisce, because I think that it's nice to reminisce, but you have to leave it at that. People will start like pulling those memories, and then they want to hold on to it. They want to replicate it. They want to feel it again. They want to live it again. And when you start comparing that moment to this moment or to a future moment, that's when it becomes detrimental. I think it's great to be nostalgic every now and again, but there's a time and a place for it. And you have to like monitor how it's making you feel, because once you start feeling that it's pulling you back towards that place and that's where you want to be more than that's where you are, that's when you get lost. So yeah, I think it's natural to want to talk about stuff like that. But like one of the things that I repeat a lot is that this very moment is the only thing that's real. That's it. And that's all you have. And then this moment gets replaced by this moment, which gets replaced by this moment. And so what you want, the goal is, and really all I'm reminding you, is that you want to make each of this moment the best moment it can be. And that's just not possible if you're constantly thinking about the past or the future. Past leads you to depression. Future leads you to anxiety. And, a lot of people have anxiety because they're constantly worried about what's going to happen. And then, that affects your nervous system, and then you're in a fight or flight state. It's a whole thing. And yeah, acupuncture is really helpful, therapy, all these things, but being present, that's medicine. And, we talk about being mindful and mindfulness, but you can't be mindful if you're not fully present, if you haven't done your work, if you're not honoring the moment. And that's why I try to really give practical tools and simple tools. It's just a matter of being vigilant and, really putting your time in, because it will work. I'm living proof that it does. All the people that I've worked with, that I've spoken to, that has changed their life, it's not me changing their life. It's the fact that they're just living more presently. And I mean, if all I'm doing is just simplifying a process, then that's enough. So, I mean, I think about it from time to time as like, what's my goal here? What am I trying to do? It's not about, monetizing this experience or my information. It's about being able to provide succinct tools so that people can reduce and eliminate self-inflicted suffering.
As I look at the most people pay attention to the meat of their day, right? What am I going to do in the waking hours? But I think certainly for me, and you touched on a little bit, is how you wake up and then how you go to bed. Because that's when sometimes waking up, that's when you say you're doing your gratitude practice, you're listening to things. And then when you're going to bed, especially for me, you have 1,000 thoughts racing in there that don't allow your mind to calm down and renew yourself. And there's where a lot of anxiety rests, in that last however long it takes you. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think that reality is a truly subjective experience, and your reality is subjective to you. Okay. So only you know how you feel throughout the day, and only you know what you need. Yes, mindfulness practice in the morning is great. I suggest that 100%. Do you need a mindfulness practice at the end of the day? Try it out, see how it feels. But to me, anchoring yourself in the beginning of the day is to me, it's more important than necessarily going through the process again in the evening.
Okay.
Now, I'm not saying that that's right for everyone at all. But what I am saying is that there's a lot of value at starting your day with a mindfulness practice. I saw someone ask a question about like anxiety and depression being a hormonal issue.
Yeah.
And I can address that as an acupuncturist, but I'll just address it from a presence perspective. Yes, I understand, and I have seen that hormones can certainly make us feel different ways. And there's a place and a time for medication for sure. I'm not here saying that psychotropic medication is not good. What I'm saying is that you can use presence as an adjunct to working through and with some of the emotions that you're experiencing. Now, if you're having hormonal imbalances, yes, you want to work with a doctor for sure. You want to use a variety of holistic ways of healing yourself. But if you really have a strong presence practice, that's going to help you work through all of the different hormonal shifts that you're experiencing because you can see it for what it is. You're no longer a rudderless ship.
Mm-hmm.
And like without presence, you're going to just feel all these different ways and you're not going to like it and you're not going to understand it. But if you're really mindful and you understand that, yes, I'm feeling a different way and it's okay, then you're able to work with it a lot better. So I'm not saying that what I'm teaching is a replacement. I'm saying that what I'm teaching is a complement to the work that you could be doing to get, your hormones in line. So hopefully that answers that question. Someone asked about a gratitude journal too. Let me just talk about that.
Well, before you go to the gratitude journal, would that be something where you talk about being the observer? So let's say if you're going through a hormonal, you said that's okay because you have to be able to see it for what it is. In other words, hey, this is happening right now. Maybe it's not my fault. I do have an imbalance. It's not the end of the world. I'm getting better. How would you go for that being an observer?
I will answer that question. What I talk about a lot is that the way that you feel, if it has to do with whatever's going on in front of your face, that's okay. And you're justified to feel that. But if you're experiencing any feelings about anything outside of the moment, you have to learn how to let that go. Now, if you're feeling hormonal, you need to honor that experience and you need to use your tools, whatever that is, to make yourself feel better. Because, you don't want to be at the mercy per se of your hormones. Yes, your hormones will make you feel different ways, especially if they're not in line, if they're out of balance or out of whack. But, being present says, look, this is happening in the here and now. This is how I feel. And I'm making a choice that I want to work with this, that I'm not resisting it. Because we talked about resistance versus acceptance. And ultimately, there's going to be moments that you're going to feel certain ways. I work with a lot of menopausal women, and that's a really challenging experience. And there are a lot of different shifts that happen. But one of the things that we talk about is that, look, and there's going to be some moments that you're going to feel certain ways and you have to be okay with it. And you have to be able to explain to the people around you that, look, this is what I'm going through. It doesn't have anything to do with the past or the future, but this is how I feel here and now. So hopefully that answered the question. Someone asked about the Facebook group. It's called Are You Being Present? A gratitude journal is very helpful, and that could be part of your mindfulness practice. You can use it in the morning. Gratitude is a very powerful presence tool. Because when you're being grateful, even if you're being grateful for things that have happened in the past, it has the ability to pull you out of that circular mind state where you could be stuck in a loop, or you're upset about something, or you're hyper-focused or obsessing, whatever it is. So I definitely recommend a gratitude journal. You can either, in your journal, write about one thing that you're really grateful for, a person, place, or thing, and write a whole paragraph. Or you can write a list of different things that you're grateful for and do it every day. And then you can kind of read through that. And that's really helpful. So I definitely suggest it. And you can put, even if you were to do it on your phone, go, if you find yourself really looped out and upset about something, just start writing about someone or something that you're really grateful for. Someone wrote about following your intuition and the voice in your head. And it's a little tricky here. But what I'm going to make an analogy so that we can kind of understand what I'm explaining. Your ego is like a 3 or 4-year-old child. It's very loud, has a very loud voice. And anyone who's had a 3 or 4-year-old child understands that they have meltdowns every now and again, and they like to get their way. And so what we do is we acknowledge the ego voice, that louder voice in your head. And you can know that it's your ego because it's not telling you productive things at all. And it's making you feel bad or upset or whatever it is. So what you want to do is just like you would with that 3 or 4-year-old child, you acknowledge it, you see it for what it is, but you don't listen to it. You basically say, look, we're not doing this right now. You're not in control, and I need to let this go. Now, if we're going to talk about intuition, it's a little trickier, but you can really only hear your intuition. It's a quieter voice. Okay. It's more subtle. Your intuition's more subtle. The ego is louder. So, and intuition, when you hear your intuition, you know it's your intuition because it tells you good things. It's not telling you bad things. It's not making you feel worse. It's leading you in the right direction. That's a personal quest too, but just understanding that that loud voice in your head is not you, because if you can hear that voice in your head and you can process it, how could it be you? What it is it's a component of your personality. And we don't need to go into the depths of ego and id and all those things. We just need to make you aware that maybe you should stop listening to that loud voice because it's really not helping you and it's constantly pulling you out of the present moment.
Amber asked, how do you stay present in the midst of others achieving their goals around you?
Clearly, you're not being present if you're being focused on other people achieving their goals. And in some way, you might be reflecting on how you're not achieving your goals. You have to remember that this is a very subjective reality, and everyone is going through their own life in their own way and feeling their own feelings. So the best thing you can do for someone is wish them well and thank them for whatever learning opportunity exists. If these people are setting their goals and they're achieving them, that's great. But that doesn't have really anything to do with you. Now, you could say, well, why am I not achieving what the next person's achieving? That's going to create a tremendous amount of self-inflicted suffering because there's always people that are going to be of higher value and lesser value. But that's a perception by itself. Everyone is exactly who they are. So once we start seeing people, places, and things for who they are, how they are, and where they are, that alleviates the suffering that is created through our perceptions.
Paul, I have a question. When we talk about following intuition and how it's telling you the good things and telling you the things that we need to hear versus what the ego would be saying. And if we follow our intuition is telling us to no longer live in the reality that we're living in. Maybe there's a day of disgust physically. Maybe their health is at risk. Perhaps they're in toxic relationships. Maybe they're in a dead end, place for their career and they're unhappy and unfulfilled there. And in that present moment, they're feeling like this is not serving me any longer. And my intuition is pulling me out of this somewhere else. And whatever that else might be, let's call it a goal, right? Mm-hmm. How would they again navigate through that? Because as I'm hearing you and talking about goals pulling you out of the present moment, but if your intuition is guiding you into a place that's, outside of where you are currently, wouldn't that then be a goal?
No, it's like, again, your intuition is, it's the voice behind the voice. Okay. We're going to set aside any religious dogma, but it's a part of your true essence. Okay. It's who you really are, and it only wants the best for you. And if you feel like your intuition is leading you through or out of a situation that you're in that doesn't feel good, the only way to really know if that's true is to be truly present with it. Okay. And that's where all of the work that I'm talking about comes in, because if you're doing your work and you're seeing things with clarity, then whatever messages are coming in that make sense, that are for your greater good, will make sense and you'll be able to make use of them. But if you don't have clarity and you're not seeing things for what they are and you're making decisions based on emotion, then of course it's not going to work out and you're just going to create more suffering for yourself. So it's going to come back to clarity. It's going to come back to not polluting your present moment with the past or the future. It's going to come back to not using labels on people, places, and things, as just seeing things for exactly how they are and being okay with it. Being present means that you are okay with things no matter how it is. Not that you're condoning a negative situation or a negative person, but you are accepting that this is exactly how it is and that you can make a decision based on that, not making a decision based on your feelings of what you feel about that person, place, or thing.
So where does planning come in?
Planning can be done intentionally. Okay, not rigidly or with expectation. So if you're planning a trip or a vacation, right? There's so many presence opportunities and presence obstacles when you're planning a trip, when you're planning a vacation. I was just reading an article online about like someone who was stuck on an airplane for 12 hours, and that's brutal, but they had plenty of time to be present, and do all the things that they wanted to do and make all the phone calls. So it's all perception. It's all about living with intention and saying, look, okay, I'm on the plane, like it's not taking off. Like, how can I make the best of this situation? This is where I'm at. I don't want to be here. I don't like this. This is not good. Like that takes you right out of the moment. So, you can plan, but it has to be intentional in the sense that, look, this is what's happening. This is what I wanted. This didn't work out the way I intended it to, but it's okay because I can adapt. Now, if you set an expectation, it's like, this didn't happen. This is bad. I don't know what I'm going to do. And then you just get looped into that thought process, and then you lose all of the opportunity for learning in that moment. Again, I'm not like saying that like presence is everything, because it's not. But presence enhances everything. And that's the important key, is that it makes life not necessarily worth living. It makes life, more joyous in the sense where you can actually live in the moment, and then you can see all the things and the beauty that exists. Because without presence, you're like a rudderless ship. You're at the mercy of your emotions or the situation or the condition.
I'll give you one last example for me that rang true, and I wrote about it before we started this call. I started to write like a little message to myself about it. I remember when Angelique and I were getting married, and everybody tells you, man, it goes, that your wedding day is going to go like that. So there's a lot of planning that goes into this wedding, and there's so much money and there's so much planning. So I remember on our wedding day thinking, hold on to the moment, you make it last, take it in. And then guess what happened, guys? Before I knew it, it was you and I in the hotel at night. The wedding was over. And I'm like, no matter how hard I told myself to hold on to the moment, the anxiety was to hold on to the moment. So I kind of lost the presence of being there in some way by worrying about it so much that it was going to pass me by. So that was a big learning lesson for me. And I'm thinking, no matter what you do, time's going to go by. Parents, out there, we have 2 little girls. And every time you meet someone with older kids, they always say they grow up quick. And there's no way we can stop time. That just causes anxiety when another parent tells you that. But I do sit there and I try and be present, and I try and listen and use my senses and smell, and then sometimes just stop and I'm grateful in that moment. Sometimes I'll wake up in the morning, and before I do my mindfulness practice, I'll grab my daughter, and while she's still sleeping, and I'll just pray and I'll say, I'm grateful for her right now. So these are things that a mind like mine, people call me the squirrel because I'm always moving around. It's a practice. And that's what Paul's taught me, that you can't expect to come to somebody one day or go on one webinar or listen to one podcast and all of a sudden you're present. It's something that you are going to have to pull yourself back into several times during the day, and you're going to slip and you're going to feel bad. And you're like, oh my God, I wasn't being present. But that doesn't mean you're going to beat yourself up and just say, well, that didn't work. You have to go back into it, just like a diet. You have a piece of pizza. You don't say, oh my God, that didn't work. You go, okay, I got to get back on track. It's a practice.
You actually make a good point about eating mindfully. And I know that eating it's a big issue for a lot of people. The thing about eating is that if you put food in your body and you're sitting there thinking, I shouldn't do this. Why am I doing this? I shouldn't, I hate myself for doing this. That's terrible. Okay, that creates a toxic situation in your body. The best thing to do is that if you decide to eat a piece of pizza or whatever it is, bless that piece of pizza, be happy about it, enjoy it, and say, look, I understand that there might be some repercussions and maybe I'll go to the gym or whatever it is, but like I have to be okay with what I'm doing. Because when you don't, you create this inner turmoil for yourself. It creates inflammation. Really, your body releases cortisol, which is a stress hormone, which is terrible for digestion. So like, if you're going to treat yourself, don't treat yourself thinking, well, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Like, why am I doing this? Be like, look, it's okay in this moment. This is my decision. This is what I want, and I'm happy for it. A lot of the patients that I work with that want to lose weight, like they cheat and they hate themselves for it. And I say, look, if you're going to cheat, love the experience, and we can work with that. But if you're working against yourself, if you're speaking against yourself, you're lost.
Good point.
Yeah, so good.
And one more thing, you talked about your wedding, like that's an apex moment, but there are many apex moments in life that you could be really present for, but you want to be present for each and every moment because they go so quickly. And as we get older, time seems to just fly right by. And if you're not in each and every moment honoring it for exactly how it is, you completely lose it. And then you look back and you try to understand what happened. Like the whole beauty of like really working on presence and mindfulness is that each and every moment you accept it for what it is. And if you ever do decide to look back, you understand, that whatever decisions were made when you were present and experiencing that moment for what it is. You don't have to live with regret. And that, that's a big problem for a lot of people is regretting some of the things that they've done. There's no regret if you were fully present and you made a decision based on whatever it is that you desired in that moment. Okay. That's actually a really important point. You can make different decisions per se, but, really be present in whatever it is that you're doing and accept it for what it is.
Love that.
Yeah.
So good.
Valuable. Well, thank you so
Very
much.
good.
Of course.
Thank you for joining us. Again, can you just repeat where they can find your podcast again? I know you said
So my podcasts are on iTunes. If you do a search for "Are You Being Present," you'll find it. I'm also on Spotify, so you can also search for "Are You Being Present." I have them on YouTube, and as soon as I post them, I also will put up a little note in my Facebook group, which is also called "Are You Being Present?" So I'm sure you see a theme here. We're really trying to hammer in this question, which I think,
yeah.
hey, look, I think it's an important question. So
yeah.
It is. It's very important. Because honestly, and I say this a lot because it's something I've had to catch for so long, is the majority of society is walking around in their subconscious mind.
Majority of people are walking up, being hammered away by that ego. And until like someone like stands in front of you and is like, look, why are you doing this? Why are you listening to this ego? Why, like, can we stop doing this right now? Like you're not, it's a serious problem. So presence is an awakening in a sense. You're awakening to the moment, you're awakening to your thought process, you're awakening to whatever's right in front of you. But until you do that, you're just like asleep at the wheel, just going through the motions. And as you know, going through the motions is a complete waste of time. It's a complete waste of life. You're not on earth to go through the motions and complete tasks. You're on earth to enjoy life in the present moment.
Thank you.
And that to me is success.
Yeah.
So awesome.
Well, thank you so much. We appreciate your time and your effort in pouring into everybody. And the
Thank
message,
you.
I think, is one that's extremely valuable. And again, judging from what we've been reading here in the chat, that a lot of people did receive it. So that's good.
Yeah, and it was also live in our Facebook group too. So I'm sure there may have been questions that we wouldn't be able to see otherwise. But
if anyone has any questions, you can email me, info@areyoubeinpresent.com. I'd be more than happy to answer those. I also have a blog post that I put together that talks about a mindfulness practice. So I can send that to you as well.
all right, Paul, thank you very much. Everyone, thank you for joining. I know that you took time out of your evening, Paul, to be here, and for those listening as well. They were very present to this moment and away from whatever else they could have been present to. So thank you so much for pouring into all of us, including David and I, and we mean that personally and obviously professionally. So we appreciate you.
You're welcome. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to present, in my humble opinion, one of the most important things that we can do in life.
Thank you for listening to the Are You Being Present podcast, brought to you by the Presence Projects. Remember, you have a choice. Choose to be present.